Hello there, welcome back to The Closet Historian. Please ignore my Nimbus 2000 pajama top and flannel pajama bottoms, which you will be able to see here in a minute. But today I wanted to show you how I'm here on the floor of my basement, I mean to say. I'm here on the floor, shaky iPhone camera, to show you how I made my faux wooden crates for my adventure style sets I did recently. I know some of you did express an interest in seeing how exactly I made these boxes or put them together. So this is how you make faux wooden crates out of cardboard boxes, styrofoam, and a heck of a lot of craft paint and hot glue. So these are how I made the boxes for my set, step by step, and I just thought I would show you all in case you guys wanted to make some faux wooden crates for yourself for an Indiana Jones themed, safari themed, pirate themed party. I think these would be great props for that, or for theater, or for Halloween as well. So let's just jump right into the tutorial and I'll show you how I put together these boxes. Let's talk about the materials you will need to make one of these boxes. So of course you will need a box. In this case I have a HelloFresh box, not sponsored, but again, if you'd like to, I am interested. I love me some HelloFresh. So I have here a HelloFresh box. You can see all the finished ones over there that I will be using today. Then of course you need some styrofoam. This is actually big, long sheets of styrofoam. This is a 1/2 inch thick polystyrene, puff little beads into a, let's see, made of little beads there. Polystyrene from Uline, the packing company, which is where I ended up getting these larger sheets for a pretty good deal as opposed to at the craft store where they are quite expensive. And then we will need some rulers. I have these metal rulers, and it's nice to have that straight right angle one to help. These are actually from my pattern drafting table, so I'll have to clean them up and get them back in my sewing room when I'm done here. This is a wood grain tool. This is what you use to create the wood patterning on the finished box. Of course, a Sharpie here, just some paint brushes. This is another wood graining tool, a hot glue gun, this one's craft size unfortunately, and glue sticks, blue painter's tape or any other masking tape. I'm using craft acrylic paint. You could use house paint or any other paint that you like. I did try to use styrofoam or styrofoam primer and spray paint to do these boxes originally, but I found that the styrofoam primer that is meant to prime styrofoam for paint melted the styrofoam still, so that was unfortunate, and spray paint does melt the styrofoam. The chemicals just don't react well together, so spray paint didn't work for me for these. You could spray paint the boxes and then paint the styrofoam, but I want them to match perfectly, so I just used the same paint for both, and I ended up using acrylic craft paint for that. That was an expensive way to go. If I did this all over again and I was doing all these boxes over here, I would have bought house paint, a couple of different shades of brown house paint, because I think it would have been cheaper in the end, because I just ended up using so many of these little guys. But that is what I will be using to do this last sample box for you as well. And then this is a styrofoam cutter tool. It's actually this gets hot and it melts the styrofoam. Because these are little beads, if you try and like cut into this, it has a very jagged edge. I've seen some people do it with like a very sharp knife at just the right angle, but I couldn't get it to work no matter how I was trying to slice it with different X-Acto knives and things like that. I couldn't cut through this without having a jaggedy edge, and this allows you to have at least a somewhat smooth edge. Of course, I don't want it to be perfect because wood wouldn't be perfect either, so when creating these faux wooden crates, I don't mind that the edge isn't absolutely perfect, but this melty tool works much better than an X-Acto or a packer's knife, or even like a steak knife. I tried everything, different kinds of knives and blades. I tried just plain razor blade to get through this, and it just doesn't cut nicely, but the melty tool works. So I did pick up that one at the craft store, but they have them at craft stores and online as well. And then I just have like a little paper bowl. Couldn't find the words paper bowl to put my paint in and stuff like that as well. You will need a little bit of water to dilute the paint a little bit as well, because you won't want to use straight up paint. You'll go through those little bottles even faster if you do that. I also do have some paper towels here for messes, and then a tarp laid down, of course, so that I don't get paint all over the floor. So those are all the materials I used to make all of those boxes over there. And of course I did create some stencils to do those lettering as well. I didn't free paint those or anything, but the rest of the painting is done either by hand or with this little wood graining tool. This they used to sell these in craft stores a lot more. Now I think they probably still have them at hardware stores. I didn't check for people who are doing faux finishing, but I got this one on Amazon. Not great to shop Amazon, but that's why I picked this one up, for relatively cheap, to be able to do all this wood graining on these boxes and give them a realistic wooden crate look. So after having made many of these boxes, I think one of the mistakes I made was painting the boxes first and then cutting all the styrofoam to size and painting those separately. I think it's better to paint the box and the styrofoam at the same time. That way you can just mix up one like pot of paint to do both, because you do want these to match as best as possible. And some of mine you can kind of tell Like here, the box and the side pieces are a little bit different color, and that's just because of having to buy different colors of paint. I kind of bought up all of the light sienna, ochre, brown kind of paint in my local craft stores when I was making those because I was buying so many of them. So I kind of ran out of the color I needed halfway through there. So I'm going to paint the box and these side pieces at the same time. So the first step here is to cut the pieces to be the pieces of wood that will frame out our wooden crate here. So the way to do that is this is just a scrap piece of styrofoam here, not a full long board, but I'm just going to take my straight ruler here and measure strips of styrofoam that are 2.5 inches wide and just draw that in with the Sharpie, and then I will show you how I cut those with the melty styrofoam tool. Now, I do recommend using this melty tool in a well-ventilated, possibly outdoor environment, because melting this plastic polystyrene does create fumes. You can kind of see the smoke coming off this little thing because it's melting previous styrofoam still on there. So it will create some fumes, and you probably shouldn't be inhaling them. I did, sit here and cut a billion strips of this once without the window open, and my throat hurt afterwards just from breathing in these fumes. So don't do it. It's real bad for you. Or wear a ventilator, or do this outside with a window. Sometimes I bring a fan down when I was doing this. But this little tool gets very hot, and you can go ahead and start melting through the lines you drew here to create your wooden strips. So you just go ahead and you melt through your styrofoam and cut your strips apart. As you can see, some of the styrofoam is lost in this. So like you lose some of your polystyrene. So if you want these to be on the thicker side, like if these ones are 2.5, they will probably finish being 2.25, because at least an eighth from each side will have been melted off. And you can see all those fumes coming off that tool there. That is why it's best to do this with ventilation, because you don't want to be breathing in melting polystyrene. I doubt that's good for you or your lungs. But I'm just going to go ahead and melt all these strips apart, and then I will show you how I cut them to size for the box. All right, now I have my 2.5 length strips. I've got some long ones, and then I have ones for my little shorter board there, but they're still going to be long enough to cut for this box. What I'm going to do is peel all the stickers off this box. I'm going to go ahead and peel off all of the tape off of this box, because of course you can't paint over this. And like this texture won't matter, because the more textured it is, the more it's going to look like flaws in natural wood. So, don't feel bad about that. But I'm going to go ahead and take all the tape off this box, and then I will actually either hot glue or tape this box completely shut as well. Hey, Denver. Once this box is completely shut up and closed, then we can go to the next step. So a good way actually to close up the boxes is to actually use masking tape on the very edges like this, because the edges will be covered by styrofoam eventually, so that's really not going to matter at all in the grand scheme of things, and it's just more important that the box is all closed up. Now you can see this box, the sides are all not, like this is shorter than this distance, so they're all the same. So what I'm going to do here, but obviously the top and bottom are the same. This side and the opposite side are the same. This side and this side are the same. So knowing that, we can use that information to our advantage. I feel like when I first started making these, I forgot that each side of the box, being a cube, was going to need 4 pieces of styrofoam, and that was going to equate to a lot of styrofoam. So suddenly this task became, larger than I thought it was going to be. So the only way to keep it straight is for me to label a side A, cut all the pieces for side A, cut A2s, which is this other side here, then label this top B, cut all the B's for the bottom, and then label the final side C and cut all the C's. And then I'll have those all labeled on the back of these pieces, and then after they're painted, I will know that, oh, this is an A2, it goes on this side. Especially because when you're cutting these, it's very important, like you cut one side first. So let's say you do, side A here. And you're going to cut your pieces flush. So you'll cut your pieces so that it's flush with the top of the box and flush with the side of the box. And then the next side, if you do B's next, you're going to want to cut them so that they overhang the side by that little like 1/2 inch. That way when all glued together in the end, instead of meeting, like if you do them both flush, there will be this gap here. If you make sure that this side is cut so that it overlaps, then it will look like this instead of like this. And so you want them to be one side to meet up on the corner like this. So like these top ones are going to be cut with this in mind, this overhang in mind, whereas the first side will be cut flush, the next side is cut with an overhang. And the same, once you get to the top and the bottoms, you want to make sure that they all meet up like this and not, so that they're, and actually I'll show you from the side too, so it's not, no, because if this one is flush to the top and this one is flush to the side, there's this gap here. It just doesn't look as finished as it does if you do this. So make sure you note that when cutting these to size. And then from the side, you can kind of see what that looks like as well. So if this goes up to here, then this overhangs. So like this has to come off the edge to create that corner as opposed to being flush as well. So just make sure when you're cutting all these things that you keep that in mind. So to cut these, I'm just going to, for this side A situation, I'm going to line it all up flush here with my box, and then I'm just going to take my little knife and slice it so that it's flush on this side as well. And that's how I'll create both this side piece and then the one that goes across the other side as well. And then I'll show you how I cut the middles. So once you cut the first one, of course you can just line it up with your next piece and then just slice it there, as opposed to having to hold it up to the box every time. Okay, so I have my first two pieces cut here. This is going to be A1, which will go across the bottom here, and then another one for the top. Now I have to cut these pieces in here. Sometimes the cutoffs from doing the first, sometimes that you can use those for that. So I always save those small pieces, but mostly I'm just going to go ahead and cut a piece that fits between these two. Okay, so now I have the first side A done. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, and I know where they will go. Of course, this other side will be painted, and eventually this numbering will be against the also painted box. The other thing here too is if you are doing this before painting like I am, you are going to want to not paint over this A up here. So just leave this corner bare. Again, it's going to be completely covered in the end, so it won't be bad to leave a little bit unpainted up in the corners, just so you can remember which side is which. And because, of course, on this box, if this is side A, this side on the other side under here will be the very same. So I can just use these pieces on top of some more as a guide. So I'll just cut across here and cut another 4 pieces for that other side. Now that I have the B1 and 2 cut for this top layer here, again, there's this extended bit hanging off the side. I'm just going to lay a piece here, and I'll just cut along here so I can make sure that these middle pieces here are long enough for allocating for the overhang here, and then that will ensure that my side B's make nice corners with my side A's. For our final side, HelloFresh, side C. So you have B and A meeting up like this, right? And now for the side C, it not only has to overhang this edge, but it also has to overhang the last one. So you have to cut these imagining that it overhangs all of these bits. So as you can see, I have it overhanging in 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here. And so just make sure you cut that with that in mind for side C, the top and the bottom as it were. So for each piece of styrofoam, this is what I mean. So the backs just kind of paint over the edges a little bit. And then on the fronts, obviously you'll paint the whole thing, and then the sides are all painted as well. So the backs look like this basically. And then I will just set that one down and paint all of these. Alright, so I have my styrofoam pieces and my hand all painted, and again, the back of these like so. And you can see the little green spots where I left the letters, so I know which side is which still. Of course you could just match these up and it will fit, but you know, this is just easier. Again, it's going to be covered by these pieces eventually, and you can always touch up if you had to with more paint. So now I'm going to go ahead and call it a night and let all of this dry, and then I will show you how to make it look like wood grain in our next step. All right, it's the next night. All of my little pieces here are dry. So those are all stacked up over here, and I have my box up here. And now we are going to use this wood graining tool to create a wood grain effect on this box. I have mixed up a lot of this like same color blue, but with light added to it, so it's a little bit lighter. I think you can do this either way, either a light box with darker graining or darker box with light graining. I'm just going to do dark box with light graining. That's how I did most of these, and I like how they came out. As you can see, I think this box here is focused on my finger. That box, the darker box there, is a lighter colored box with dark graining on it. I just don't like it as much as the other ones. I think that the light color as the second color is better. So that's what I'm going to do here again on this blue box. And so I'm going to go ahead and paint this box with a paintbrush here. Let me find a bigger one. Probably gonna use this guy. So I will just go one side at a time, and I will only be able to do probably 3 sides tonight, and then I will have to turn the box on a dry side tomorrow and do the other 3 sides basically. It's kind of how painting these works. But I will go ahead and brush paint on basically. You put the paint on, and then you take this guy and you roll your wrist back and forth as you go along the box, and it will leave the wood grain pattern when you roll your wrist back and forth while doing that. So you paint the box and then pull this against the wet paint and pull off some of it. Hopefully I'll be able to capture that on my other camera I have set up here, so you can see the exact wrist motion that leads to this effect basically. But this really does all the work for you, this tool, so it's good to have one of these if you don't want to be hand painting wood patterning on all of your boxes. Also, I'm wearing pajamas, I don't mind if I get paint on, and I have a towel nearby that obviously is quite ruined. That is because it's kind of hard to clean this in between swipes of it because it's got these deep grooves. So I kind of just press it into a textured towel like this, and that helps get off some of the excess paint so that those grooves can still make another graining pattern the next time. So I will try and capture this whole thing on one of these cameras here, but in general I'm just going to be using this color and this tool to create the wood grain effect on here. So you can see the effect that this has. So you just paint the whole surface, and you can see the texture of the cardboard comes through on this, which is not ideal, but what are you gonna do? And you just drag this along the wet paint, kind of shifting your rolling along this roll here. If you just pull it straight, it kind of creates more of this sort of board, and every time you rock it, it creates one of these almost knots in the wood. So just do this to all the sides to kind of create that wood grain effect, especially from far away. I think it's very evocative and effective. So here's my first 3 sides of my box chilling over here. Of course, I can't lay it down on any other sides now because 3 of them are wet with paint. So I can't, with the wet paint, I can't lay it down on its side. So I have to do the other 3 sides when that is dry. So probably tomorrow I'm going to go ahead and start work on these though. Now, unfortunately, because of the rather rough texture and yet at the same time sort of fragile and soft texture of the Styrofoam, you cannot use the same tool on those. You can see how much paint that the thing collects, which is why I've been dabbing it onto the towel to try and get the texture back to be able to use it again. But this just doesn't work on here. I tried. So for these, I kind of hand paint them, and I will try again to capture on the other camera how exactly I do that, and I will leave this one actually running just so we can have the microphone. Can I create, oh, I can kind of create a tripod over here. All right, let's see. So we have our pieces. I'll try and grab a little guy here. The way I do this is I just grab a little bit of paint on one of my brushes, and I just drag it down the length a couple of times to start. So I just have a couple of lines there. Then I might drag it down from the side a little bit, up from the end a little bit, and then I will just dry brush to pick up the texture. You can see the texture of the Styrofoam comes through there quite a lot. And so I'll just kind of dry brush the rest of it. And that's about the extent of how I paint these. Now up close, you know, this kind of looks stripy and weird, but from far away, I think it really works for giving the effect of wood. I might go a little bit down the sides just to give it a little bit, if that area gets seen. But mostly that is what I do. Just a couple of stripes down the center, a little bit in from the outer ends of the thing, and then dry brush the rest of the paint on my little brush here over the length of it to give it a little bit more of a, not distressed, but distressed almost look. And that is how I will go ahead and paint all of these pieces to look like this one. So hopefully I can capture some of that on the other camera for you as well, so you can really see what I am doing. But I'm gonna go ahead and do that to all of these pieces and then let them dry overnight once again. So every once in a while I will do a little bit more of a curvy one just to give this the look, like those are the more like just straight across ones like I was showing you. Every once in a while we'll give it a little bit of a curve like the wood grain was trying to avoid a knot or something like that, and that just, I wouldn't do that with every piece because it's a little bit much. It does create more of a little bit of almost a like storybook kind of look to these, which I'm not exactly going for, so I don't do curly Q kind of things very much, but you can get quite exaggerated with this or stick to being quite natural looking if you should so desire. Again, that's how they come out looking in the end doing what I'm doing now. So that's kind of, you can see on this one how this one has a little bit of a curve to it. You don't really notice until I point them out, but a lot of these are just, well, all of these are painted the exact same way as I'm doing over here. Now, of course, I'm painting a blue one, but you know, why not have a blue crate? Something a little bit different. I did have, you can see this one teal one that I had on my original set as well. And I kind of just wanted another colored one, so I thought I would do this one as our example one for you. But I'm just going to go ahead and paint all the rest of these like this, but every once in a while I do a bit of a curvier one just to throw it in there and add a little bit of variety to the wood grain, as it were. All right, so when you have all of your pieces, it should look something like this while they are drying. Again, you don't have to be super, perfect about this. You don't have to be very precious. You can dry brush them, just streak across them really quickly, basically. They don't have to be perfect for them to end up looking like that. So yes, my set area here is messy. You can see this is all from filming videos down here on set, but so this, these boxes are made just as messily as these ones. So you just don't have to be that precious about this. You can go quite quickly, especially if, like me, you're making a bunch of these. So I will show you how to finish up tomorrow by gluing all these pieces on where they go. All right, sorry, the lighting is kind of crazy. So now that my box is all painted with its faux finishing, these little strips are painted with their faux finish. Now it's time to go back to, this is a side A here. And these are all my pieces that are labeled side A. And I'm just gonna go ahead and hot glue these on. I'm just gonna put some hot glue. Got a couple of mini guns heating up here. I'm just gonna put hot glue on the ends, mostly like concentrating here, and then a little bit in the middle. Put some globs of hot glue on, and then just hold these on there while they set a little bit, just because it might melt the styrofoam a little bit. So you do kind of want to hold them on there. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue this first side, and then I'll show you how I do a side B after that. So once you have your side A's glued on here, basically like so, you can see here, this is why we cut these thinking about having it overlapped, because if you glue them on like that, the corner just looks a little rough, but they look really nice when you have these all cut to be meeting up at the corners like that. So I'm going to go ahead and glue on my side B's here as well, and then I will do the final 2 sides for side C here. All right, and then when you get to a side C, of course, you have all this, the sides A and B are kind of flush, and so we cut these specifically long enough to close up those last few corners. So when you glue on side C here, make sure you have them overlapping appropriately like you had planned when cutting them all. So everything will, ooh, hard to do this while filming. So everything will properly line up at the corners, and you can go ahead and glue that last side down. So then once everything is glued on, you have basically your faux wooden crate here. Basically, you know, a nice wooden crate to create a backdrop with for, you know, whatever you need, perhaps. They are obviously very lightweight and easy to move around. You don't want to kick them or nick them too badly because the styrofoam is, of course, kind of fragile, but they can always be touched up with a little bit more paint, and they are easily stackable for creating backdrops or sets or whatever you may need. So that is how I made my faux wooden crate boxes. And thank you for tuning in today. I'm sorry about the bit of an informal sort of tutorial with these. I'm kind of done with making them. I don't think I'll be making any more for a while because it is kind of exhausting. But I wanted to show you guys how I made these in case you were interested in making your own. So that was basically my process for making these guys, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you again soon. Bye.